3101. Regarding the chairman, we acknowledge and appreciate the chairman's willingness to hear our views. And we would note, going back to last summer, the outdoor advertising industry appreciated the opportunity to testify at the invitation of the governor's task force that examined these issues. Throughout this process, consistently, we have supported good government. We have supported reforms designed to advance ethics and fairness. We support transparency of ownership interest. We support a rational hearing and bidding process. At the same time, Mr. Chairman, we have been consistent in our opposition to tax policies that we view as unfair, that are contrary to previous legislative action and a Supreme Court ruling. Likewise, we view a portion of this bill to carry First Amendment ramifications. In the non-tax area, we do not support a government cap on outdoor advertising space on state lands, and as we have stated previously and consistently, we have a concern about a portion of this legislation, specifically Section 7, that would take away authority from local control. Under current procedure, a state entity should obtain municipal advice and approval for non-government projects such as a billboard. The pending legislation says that a state entity need only submit a plan for a billboard to a municipal planning board for advice, but not for local approval. From the local standpoint, municipalities should ensure that they have local control. From a private sector standpoint, the state would receive a competitive advantage over private operators who must abide by all local land use regulations. In sum, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the playing field would be decidedly tilted in favor of government. For more than a century, the outdoor advertising industry has been a proud part of the New Jersey business community, helping to create jobs, helping business and the state communicate with consumers, and helping many nonprofits and charities to promote worthy causes. We look forward to serving our advertisers and our communities for the next 100 years. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Klein, thank you for your testimony. Is there any questions? Mr. Malone?
Just so I understand what you're saying, if the state decides to allow a company to put up a billboard structure on a state-owned piece of property, it can do it without really any local control. That's my understanding, even for any type of sign that they want to put up. So it really, in essence, is a state-controlled situation that has no local control.
Our point would be, from the lay standpoint, that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and we support an even playing field between the state applicants and private. Sir, we'd be glad to submit promptly a legal analysis on this point. We'll get that to you by this afternoon.
Can you think of any justification why it should not, if there's going to be a commercial billboard for commercial purpose, not a state public announcement, can you think of any reason why the billboard shouldn't have the same stringent requirements for any type of billboard for commercial purposes?
As I've stated, we're for an even playing field. I would answer in the negative and indicate that what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, and all we're asking for is the same treatment, whether the applicant be the state or a private sector entity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. McHose?
Mr. Klein, just a quick question. I received a call from a constituent who owns a billboard, and he was concerned because last year when there was a billboard fee, I think it was called a fee, he was concerned because he said a fee is usually in exchange for a service. And I was wondering, is there any benefit from the fee that you're paying to the industry? Is there a return?
The general rationale behind fees is that they're commensurate with the administrative cost. We pay fees in jurisdictions coast to coast, including in New Jersey. In our policy position, which I believe is rational and should be shared in other fee structures, is that the fee basically pay for the cost of the administration of the fee. However, if a fee exceeds that cost, then it becomes an income tax or a form of tax, which we would dispute.
So do you consider this to be a similar situation? This is just a tax on a tax.
Well, there are two portions that deal with taxes in this bill. One would be a gross receipts tax of 6%, which was enacted to start by July 1 last year. And the second portion of the tax policy refers to property taxation. Both of those are tax issues as distinct from a fee. In terms of our position on those, we did not favor either tax, and going forward are opposed to the gross receipts tax and to the reimposition of property taxation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no one else, Mr. Klein, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion on the bill? It's been a motion. So it's a motion on the bill with amendments? Motion on the bill as amended, and there's been a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Malone? No. Mr. Lee? No. Mr. O'Toole? No. Ms. McCose? No. Mr. Cryan? Mrs. Greenstein?
Abstain.
Ms. Quigley?
Yes.
Mr. Voss?
Yes.
Ms. Watson-Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Payne?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwald?
Yes. Bill passes. It's released. Ladies and gentlemen, next we will entertain testimony on Assembly Bill 2878. It is a supplemental appropriation of $3.6 million in state and federal funds to expand the traumatic brain injury waiver. We have one person who has signed up to testify, Tom Grady, with the Brain Injury Association, in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, imagine if our state budgeted funds that will save itself money and provide a valuable service to one of our most vulnerable populations, Medicaid-eligible people with brain injury. General Assembly Bill number 2878 will achieve this goal. My name is Tom Grady, and I represent the Brain Injury Association of New Jersey. I'm here today to testify in support of 2878 and ask this committee to release it. First, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Chair, for your sponsorship of the bill and for placing it on the committee agenda. And thank you to those of you who have indicated their support. Assemblyman Blee, thank you very much. And just want to say thank you. The brain injury population has a problem. About 200 people are waiting for services via the Traumatic Brain Injury Medicaid Waiver Program, TBI waiver for short. Consequently, there is a referral or waiting list of about 200 Medicaid-eligible people with brain injury. I'm sorry, back up a little bit. Currently, the TBI waiver contains 250 slots. All 250 slots are filled. However, the demand for TBI waiver services has increased. Consequently, there is a referral or waiting list of about 200 Medicaid-eligible people with brain injury. The goal of the TBI waiver is to offer critical services to Medicaid-eligible people with brain injury in a community-based setting. The waiver serves people ages 18 through 64 who have sustained a brain injury after the age of 16. A solution to this problem is adding 50 slots to the TBI waiver. These slots will enable at least 50 more people to receive care and ease the waiting list. More than 50 people with brain injury can be served when others vacate a slot. These 50 slots will cost $1.8 million. The federal government will match each dollar the state appropriates. Therefore, $3.6 million will be available for these 50 additional slots. Is this budget item a good investment? Yes. The concept of the TBI waiver is to avoid placing Medicaid-eligible people with brain injury in a nursing home when their needs do not require nursing home care. Everyone who is on the waiting list is either in a nursing home or at risk of being placed in a nursing home. If these people assume a TBI waiver slot, they will get the right type of care at lower cost to the state of New Jersey. TBI waiver services must cost less than nursing home services in order for a person with brain injury to assume a waiver slot. According to the New Jersey Department of Human Services, the average cost per month to serve someone using a waiver is $5,961, and nursing home care is more expensive. Passage of 2878 will enable Medicaid-eligible people with brain injury to receive appropriate health care services relative to their needs at lower cost to the state of New Jersey. Failure to pass this bill will result in people with brain injury receiving inappropriate care at higher cost to the state. Passage of A2878 makes both fiscal and humanitarian sense. I encourage all of you to vote in favor of this bill and release from committee today, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. For the members of this committee, this is a consent bill. We certainly appreciate your support. There was some very eloquent and compelling testimony from a parent yesterday at the Senate committee who had a child who suffered an injury at the age of 12. They would not be covered under this bill because of current federal waivers that the state does not benefit from. We are going to put a sentence within the statement of this bill to urge the Department of Human Services to pursue that and to address that problem. But in the meantime, as you have heard, this will allow us to cut into the adult population, those over 18, by approximately 25%, and it is certainly worthy. Every one of these cases are tragic. This allows us to do something very special for these individuals and their families. We thank you for your testimony, and for those who are under 18, we're going to do everything we can to address that with the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call. Motion. It's been a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Malone? Yes. Mr. Blee? Mr. O'Toole? Yes. Ms. McCose? Mr. Cryan? Ms. Greenstein? Ms. Quigley? Mr. Voss? Ms. Watson-Coleman? Mr. Payne? Mr. Greenwald?
Yes, I'd like to thank my co-sponsor, Assemblyman Barnes. Ladies and gentlemen, next we're going to address another consent bill, Assembly Bill 500, along with Senate Bill 1192, this New Jersey STARS program. Thank you. Sponsored by Assemblywoman Watson-Coleman here in this House. It has been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Malone? Yes. Mr. Blee? Yes. Mr. O'Toole? Yes. Ms. McCose? Mr. Cryan? Yes. Ms. Greenstein? Ms. Quigley? Mr. Voss? Yes. Ms. Watson-Coleman? Mr. Payne? Yes. Mr. Greenwald?
Yes. County colleges, congratulations.
0506.
Now, for those of you who thought this was moving smoothly, we'll move to the non-consent list. Assembly Bill 3102, sponsored by Assemblyman Caraballo, changes the phase-out schedule of the Transitional Energy Facility Assessment Unit rate surcharges. Jeffrey Marsh with Treasury and Taxation is available to answer any technical questions. There is no one else signed up to testify. Any questions? Seeing no questions, is there a motion? There's been a motion. Is there a second? It's been a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Malone? No. Mr. Blee? No. Mr. O'Toole? No. Ms. McCose? Mr. Cryan? Yes. Ms. Greenstein? Ms. Quigley? Mr. Voss? Yes. Ms. Watson-Coleman? Mr. Payne? Yes. Mr. Greenwald?
Yes. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we will entertain Assembly Bill 3103. It transfers $110 million from the State Disability Benefits Fund to the General Fund. No one has signed up to testify. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Malone? No. Mr. Blee? No. Mr. O'Toole? No. Ms. McCose? No. Mr. Cryan? Yes. Ms. Greenstein? Ms. Quigley? Mr. Voss? Yes. Ms. Watson-Coleman? Mr. Payne? Yes. Mr. Greenwald? Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, next we will address Assembly Bill 3104. It redirects $100 million in unemployment taxes to the Health Care Subsidy Fund, changing the threshold for employer unemployment taxes. This bill will be, there will be a request for a motion to move the bill as amended. We have Betsy Ryan from the New Jersey Hospital Association in favor, and Kevin Murphy with the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey, opposed. Ms. Ryan?
Good afternoon. I will be brief. I just want to thank the sponsor and the committee for considering this bill. As you know, each year we come before the committee and ask for a small diversion from the Unemployment Compensation Fund to, in fact, fund charity care. It is my understanding in this bill that $50 million of the $100 million will go towards charity care and $50 million will be dedicated towards Medicaid. We strongly support this diversion. As you all know, and I think I've talked to just about each of you, New Jersey hospitals are hurting. Under the existing charity care formula, 55 hospitals get just 12 cents on the dollar for every dollar of care they provide. We're hopeful this year through the budget process, working with the chair and all of you, we can attain a new formula or a significant funding increase, but this $50 million diversion towards charity care will help us attain that very important goal. I would also say that this money is matchable by the feds, and I would ask the committee to consider dedicating the $50 million matching funds it generates towards charity care as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Murphy, welcome.
You have our written comments, so I'm going to be brief as well. The Chamber is opposed to the use of the fund for any purpose other than it was intended to do. Rather than using excess money in the fund for purposes other than its intended use, the UI tax rate should be reduced to avoid the temptation of dipping into the fund to pay for state programs. The Chamber is not opposed to charity care. Charity care is a societal responsibility and therefore should be funded through a broad-based revenue source to which all residents of the state contribute. We also believe that it is incumbent upon the legislature and the current administration to find a stable funding source for charity care other than the UI fund. Charity care should be funded at adequate level as well. The Chamber believes that since the state mandates hospitals provide this care, it is incumbent on the state to ensure that the hospitals are adequately reimbursed for the cost of providing this care. For these reasons, we urge you to vote against this bill. Available for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Murphy, thank you. Last year, I believe over $300 million was taken from this fund. It has been reduced to under 100. To 100, I should say. The funding last year went for charity care. We have not only kept pace with charity care, but we are working very hard to try to increase it. I know that is an issue that is critically important to the Chamber, since the hospital industry is the second largest employer in the state and would affect your industry and all of the people that supply to those hospitals in a dramatic fashion. I believe that reduction shows a strong commitment from this administration to attempt to reduce our reliance on that fund, and we will continue to do so as we continue to face billions of dollars in deficits. We understand your concern, we share your concern, but we are balancing needs and wants at this point, and this is something that is critical, I believe. Any comments or questions? Ms. McCose.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for you. I'm a little confused because it just seems like this charity care, this is like a Band-Aid approach to this problem. I mean, I think it's been an ongoing problem, but didn't you have a bill in that would address charity care, and can you tell us what's happening with that, or is that part of this, or is it different?
Well, it's, I'll answer your question. Let me just say that, this bill does not deal with that. This is a part of funding for charity care. We have a bill in that a number of members in a bipartisan fashion have signed on to fully fund charity care. To change the formula for funding charity care, because right now it deals with a shiftability argument. If you're profitable in one area, you're asked to shift those profits and apply that against your charity care requirements and what you provide in charity care services. It is unfair. It has always been unfair. Every hospital in the state has signed off on changing the formula. The problem is, unless we have the money to fully fund charity care, and if we change the formula prior to those funds being in place, some hospitals that are relying on those funds will lose money, and some of those hospitals are in all of our districts, regardless of political party. So the reality is that we need to work very hard to find those funds. The bill changes the funds. It changes the formula. It is our responsibility to find the funds to replace it. It is why while we are still relying on this, we are relying on it to a lesser degree, and we are looking at other areas, including things in the future like maybe sports wagering and others, to address those problems.
So your bill will come not as part of the budget, it'll be separate from later? I mean, it'll be later in this...
Now, if we find the funding, we will move the bill to change the formula. The funding is part of the budget. The formula is secondary to the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion on the bill. There's been a motion and a second. As amended, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Malone? No. Mr. Blee? No. Mr. O'Toole? No. Ms. McHose? No. Mr. Cryan? Ms. Greenstein? Yes. Ms. Quigley? Yes. Mr. Voss? Yes. Ms. Watson-Coleman? Yes. Mr. Payne? Yes. Mr. Greenwald?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, last bill for the day is Assembly Bill 3107, sponsored by Speaker Series. It establishes the 4-year registration period on new passenger automobiles. We have Deputy Chief Administrator Sean, is it Sheekley? Sheeky. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Chief of Staff Dennis Rival, and Director of Legal Affairs Steve Robertson. They are in favor, no need to testify here to answer questions. Is there any questions? Mr. Malone.
Just a comment. I am concerned about this because this really, in essence, I think is going to increase, depending on the type of vehicle you have, the cost of somebody purchasing a vehicle by anywhere from $200 to $400, maybe $500. And I just am concerned about that. I just think that it's excessive. And you add this, and if the tire tax goes through, it's going to be another $10, $15. It's just, I think just a straight out money grab, and I just think it's not the appropriate thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a follow-up to the DOT's original appearance here. I had raised the issue of a refund mechanism, and I was told that there was none in place. Has any of that changed?
Through the chair, through the Assemblywoman, that has not changed. However, as is the case today, if you sell your car before your registration is up, you are able to transfer the equity of that registration to the new car purchase.
But let me ask then, so if I only kept my car for 2 years, so 2 years worth of the registration would be credited to me to go toward the next vehicle, so then would I only be paying 2 years on the new vehicle, or would I be registering it for 6 years? That's what I'm confused about.
You would have the amount of time left on your registration. You still have that equity. So, I mean, the exact logistics I hear you saying of if you purchase another brand new car, you would, I'd have to get back to the actual logistics of actually purchase the car, but my thought would be you would pay 2 years worth of registration for that car because you would be transferring the equity of the registration you currently have.
See if I can help you, sir. Our understanding of this is if you transfer your plates, you buy a new car and you transfer your plates, then you will be able to carry forward the remainder of what you had originally purchased when you purchased those plates. So if you had 2 years left, you would carry forward 2 years. You would only have to buy 2 additional years. And my belief is you may not have to buy those until that registration expires. You would just be transferring your registration and your plates.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to have clarity on that because if I am being forced to pay for 4 years worth of registration if I'm buying a new car, well, the 2 years, I guess, will be credited, then I would still have to pay.
No, Assemblywoman, I think you're focusing on the car, and it's really the registration. The registration transfers with the plates. The reason why you need a new registration is because you need the new VIN number on the registration.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make a point that I'm still pushing for a refund, so thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Point well taken. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion on the bill. And a second, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Malone? No. Mr. Blee? Mr. O'Toole? No. Ms. McCose? Mr. Cryan? Ms. Greenstein? Ms. Quigley? Mr. Voss? Ms. Watson-Coleman? Mr. Payne? Mr. Greenwald?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you. We are going to recess the committee. We may very well be back here on Friday. As soon as we are aware of a time, we will notify you. But at this point, it looks like Friday and possibly Tuesday. So if you can, prepare your calendars.
Please stay and sign the...
We have one last signature as well.